looks like I'm live. Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. Hope you are all doing well. I'm super excited to talk to you today about an important topic. Give me just a minute. I'm going to give it a minute to let people hop on. If you're here with me live, say hello, drop me a hashtag live. Let me know if you have food sensitivities. If you've ever tried cutting out certain foods, how you feel now, or maybe if you think that you have, some food sensitivities. I'm just gonna tag some people here so that the people who wanted to be here, send them a reminder. So give me just a minute. If you're just joining me, let me know if maybe you think you have some food sensitivities or what you are hoping to learn during this. And I will get started in just a second. This is so much easier when I do the interviews with people because while they're talking, I can tag people, but when it's me, I have to talk and tag at the same time. So be patient with me here and we will get started in a second. I wish there was a better way. So I don't know if anybody else has this issue with Facebook, but it does not let me go live in the event when I use Zoom. So I can't share my slides, which I have, and I can't, so then people don't like see the event. They're like, where's the event? And I feel like Facebook just has something against me. I don't know. I'm constantly having issues. They don't like my they don't like my beliefs when it comes to health, I guess. So maybe they're punishing me. I don't know. That's fine. I'm almost done here. So one more. Okay, cool. So like I said, if you're here live, say hello, drop me a like. Throughout this presentation, if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat. When I share my screen, I won't be able to see the chat, but I will stop share at the end and then I will go and I will answer anything. Yeah, absolutely, Jolene. So I'll definitely be covering that. Interested to understand how healthy foods can cause sensitivities and notice the signs. Absolutely, we will be going over that for sure. Like one of the things that showed up when I was reacting to so many foods were super healthy foods like celery, tomatoes, coconuts, almonds, all of these things I was reacting to, but that was because the state of my gut at the time. And now those foods don't bother me now that I've killed my gut. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. All right, cool. So are food sensitivities causing your health issues? So basically what happens with this is, our gut becomes unhealthy, it becomes hyperpermeable. We've heard the term leaky gut, and that the foods that we're eating, then our immune system has a response to those foods. So little disclaimer here, this presentation is not intended as medical advice. It is for educational purposes only. Please seek a qualified practitioner if you are attempting to change your diet or get any type of functional lab testing. So a little bit about me, as I know we have a ton of people in this group and not everybody knows me. So my name is Brittany Prince. I'm a holistic nutritionist. I'm a certified nutritional therapist, certified nutritional health coach, and certified nutrition coach. Those are just the main ones. Some other letters behind my name, but I won't get into all of those. I'm also a certified practitioner with Daphne Labs Biometa Tests. I have a bachelor's degree in nutrition and dietetics from the University of New Mexico. My primary focus in my practice is gut health and autoimmune disease after my own personal health struggles and those of my father. I know some of you have seen those posts, and when I talk about my dad and what he went through with Western medicine, and have just shared with me some of your struggles. So that's really why I do what I do, because no one should suffer through life like that, and no one should be made to feel hopeless about their health by their doctors. I use a functional medicine approach to getting to the root cause of my clients' issues using the lab testing. And then I follow a more holistic approach and with my coaching style, because I focus not only on the physical health, but really mental, emotional, and spiritual health as well, so that we are all holistically healthy, because I think that's really important. I call those the four legs of the chair. If one of those is off, then you're going to be very wobbly. So food allergy versus food sensitivity. So a food allergy, that response is initiated by the immune system. Those symptoms include hives, swelling, itching, dizziness, anaphylaxis, and can also be some digestive symptoms. So a food sensitivity or intolerance is more a response initiated by the digestive system. Symptoms include gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, cramping, nausea. And it's estimated that about 15 million adults in the US alone suffer from food allergies. About 4% of the adult population and about 8% of children. These numbers don't even take into account, though, the food intolerances or food sensitivities that don't show up on these allergy tests. So this means the real number is likely a lot higher. And, food intolerances, definitely not the same as food allergies. Some of the symptoms can overlap, but they happen for different reasons. Like I mentioned, food allergies happen because of that response by the immune system to foods or certain parts of foods that are allergens. When the body reacts to an allergen, it releases chemicals called histamines that can cause symptoms. So people with food allergies can have digestive, respiratory, and even skin symptoms. People with severe allergies can have those life-threatening reactions like anaphylaxis, someone has a severe shellfish or, peanut allergy. They might carry something like you see on this picture here, an EpiPen, because they could literally die if they don't have that with them. So food allergies, those are diagnosed with blood tests that measure IgE antibodies. Those are produced due to the body's immune response to certain foods. While a food allergy is an immune system response to a food intolerance is more a problem with digesting the food itself. People with intolerances can have those GI symptoms, like I mentioned. But unlike a food allergy, food intolerance does not cause that anaphylactic reaction. Identifying a food intolerance requires careful observation of cause and effect. Some people are intolerant to food additives like flavorings, dyes, and preservatives. And then you can develop sensitivities to all sorts of different foods as well, even healthy foods. So top food triggers, these 8 foods are responsible for 90% of food allergy reactions. So eggs, milk, fish, shellfish, peanuts, tree nuts, wheat, and soybeans. So on product labels, you will always see these listed as allergens at the end, may contain this, or food allergen info. Different labels have different ways of wording it. The most common food sensitivities or intolerances, like cow's milk, cheese, whey protein, so dairy products, gluten from gluten-containing grains like wheat, barley, rice, quinoa, oats, and other gluten-free grains can also cause a lot of issues with people. So that's me personally. I don't do well with quinoa anymore, and that is unfortunate because I love quinoa and it's a complete protein and it's very healthy. But I just noticed that it gives me a similar reaction to gluten, so I choose to avoid it now. Corn is another big one. I do try to avoid corn, especially if it's not organic, because it's most likely genetically modified and we have no idea what else that's doing to our bodies. And it's also pumped full of glyphosate, which also might be the reason why it contributes to the digestive issues, not just that it's the corn itself. Eggs is another one. Soy, legumes, really disappointed about this one as well. I don't sit well with lentils. I seem to do well if eggs are in something, but if I eat eggs by themselves, I definitely have some GI upset. I also try to avoid soy as much as possible. I notice that I don't have as many issues with fermented soy. And then I can eat like edamame every once in a while, but if I consume a lot of soy regularly, like tofu, if I ate a meal of tofu, I have some digestive issues, even if it's organic tofu. Tree nuts are another sensitivity that people can have. Like for a while, I had a coconut and an almond sensitivity. It's because of the health of my gut, and that does not bother me anymore. Citrus fruits, nightshades, so like eggplant, tomatoes, peppers, those seem to trigger some reactions, especially in people with autoimmunity. So the most common for the food allergies is that IgE mediated reaction that I mentioned. These are allergic antibodies. They cause an immediate reaction when chemicals like histamine from mast cells are released in the body. These can be fatal, unlike a food intolerance or sensitivity. In extreme cases, ingestion or even touching a small amount of the allergen can cause a severe reaction. So I even know, some people with celiac that are super, super sensitive to gluten. Like even if their family does something, cook something in the kitchen, they can have a reaction even if they're nowhere near the kitchen. So during this, I'm really going to focus more on the food sensitivities in this presentation, because those are the ones that are less likely known and can be harder to determine what is bothering you. So a sensitivity or intolerance to a certain food, like I said, it does not trigger that immune system. Instead, it triggers that intolerance in your digestive tract. Eventually, it does kind of trigger the immune system, but in a different way. And I can explain that a little bit later. But basically what happens with these food intolerances is our body just can't properly break down that food. Like lactose intolerance, right? So when your body can't break down lactose, sugar found in dairy products, you can definitely experience some GI upset, right? And so there's a few reasons why you can develop these, food sensitivities. So not having the right enzymes that you need to break down that food. So like I said, with lactose, with, lactose intolerance, we don't produce enough lactase. So we can't properly break down that protein, or that sugar. So it gives us that issue. People can have reactions to food additives or preservatives like sulfites, MSG, or artificial colors. I definitely noticed that I have some issues with foods high in sulfites, MSG as well. There can also be like pharmacological factors, sensitivity to caffeine or other chemicals, sensitivity to sugars naturally found in certain foods like onions, broccoli, or Brussels sprouts. So that's typically when there's some GI issues going on. If anybody's heard of like a low FODMAP diet, those foods kind of tend to ferment in the gut because you're not moving things through properly and disposing of them. And the main reason for food sensitivities, leaky gut. So that is when the lining of our gut spreads apart. So we have these like tight junctions, right? And they're only supposed to let vitamins, minerals, nutrients through into the bloodstream, but through stress, poor diet, chemicals, toxins, all kinds of things, they make that leaky gut. So those tight junctions become like loose junctions, and then all of these large food particles get into the bloodstream. And then this does initiate eventually an immune response. So this is big with like Hashimoto's and gluten. So that gluten keeps getting out of the gut into the bloodstream. Eventually, it overtaxes the liver. This can lead to fatty liver disease and eventually cirrhosis, because the liver is just so overburdened. It can't get rid of all of this stuff that's in the blood that's not supposed to be in the blood. And then eventually the immune system does start responding, and it attacks these molecules, these food molecules, but in a different way than it does with the actual allergy. So it sees these foreign molecules, it initiates a response. Well, with Hashimoto's, there's something called molecular mimicry. So the thyroid cells, the tissue is very similar to the gluten protein. So eventually the immune system is attacking all this gluten protein in the body. And then it sees, oh, hey, that looks very similar. So then the immune system starts attacking the thyroid, eventually, leading to Hashimoto's disease. So, if we continue to eat these foods, that does lead to an immune response and then eventually autoimmunity. So symptoms of food sensitivities, typical GI issues, frequent gas, bloating, indigestion, constipation, diarrhea, nausea, stomach cramping, fatigue, brain fog, inability to lose weight, stuffy nose. I notice that when I do eat dairy, I get very mucusy. I can't breathe well the next day. It also breaks my skin out horribly. I had some gluten-free Alfredo pasta, and I don't normally eat anything like that, even if it's gluten-free. But someone made it for me. So I was like, okay. And I didn't even have very much. And oh my gosh, I woke up the next day with 3 pimples on my face and I was so stuffed up. I was like, this is why I don't eat like that. Trouble breathing, wheezing, or coughing. Inflammation, skin issues like eczema and acne, and headaches. Headaches are a big one. So how do we identify food sensitivities? So one way is like an elimination diet. It's a short-term eating plan, and that eliminates certain foods that may be causing allergies and other digestive reactions. Then it reintroduces the foods one at a time in order to determine which foods are and are not well tolerated. The main reason for doing an elimination diet is to pinpoint exactly what foods are the culprit for digestive and other health-related issues. When someone is experiencing ongoing symptoms and they can't seem to figure out what's wrong with them. The problem with elimination diets is that they are restrictive, and they can also take a lot of time to actually figure out what your body is reacting to, because you can't just add all the foods back in, right? You need to eliminate, these last for like 3 to 6 weeks. It's believed that the antibodies, the proteins that our immune system makes when it negatively reacts to foods, take around 3 weeks to dissipate. So you've got to go on a pretty bland diet for at least 3 weeks. So this is usually the minimum time needed for someone to fully, not have any issues from those sensitivities and notice improvements in their system. Some water. Let me know, and I'll be checking the comments after. So let me know if you guys have ever tried an elimination diet. How did it go? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? Did it work? Did it help you? Let me know in the comments. So even if you've opted to have a food allergy test done, at a physician's office in the past, you still might be missing something, because it's common for allergy tests to show negative results for underlying sensitivities that are not true allergies, yet can still cause negative symptoms, right? So those food allergy tests, the typical blood test, that is testing for those antibodies. But if we don't have the antibodies for that food, but we're still getting symptoms from it, because it's not an allergy, it's just it's sensitivity or intolerance, it's not going to show up on the allergy test. So I've had that done too. Like quinoa was fine on my allergy test. Lentils are fine on my allergy test. Coffee was fine on my allergy test, but I know by consuming them, my body doesn't like them, right? So that food allergy, that's an overreaction of the immune system to that specific food protein, but similar effects can happen even when someone doesn't test positive for the allergy. When a food protein is ingested that isn't well tolerated, it triggers the range of reactions. You can deal with rashes, hives, swelling, trouble breathing, those GI issues like I mentioned before. So identifying and removing food allergies and sensitivities is vital to overall health. When you struggle with an ongoing unidentified sensitivity, your body constantly sends out these inflammatory responses that can cause harm in multiple ways. So food sensitivities and allergies are correlated with increased chance for developing chronic fatigue, arthritis, asthma, nutrient deficiencies, mood disorders, including depression and anxiety, skin flare-ups like eczema, hive, and acne, autoimmune disorders, atherosclerosis, so that's like hardening of the arteries, precursor to heart disease, cognitive decline, and neurodegenerative diseases, including Parkinson's and dementia, learning disabilities like ADHD, trouble sleeping or insomnia, adrenal fatigue, muscle and joint pain, such like arthritis, arthritic pain. So if I accidentally consume gluten now, like I feel it in my joints. I feel that inflammatory response because my body is no longer used to consuming it every day. So when I do consume it, I have a horrible reaction to it actually. Headache for about 3 days. I can feel the inflammation in my joints. My whole body will ache, and then I won't even mention the GI symptoms that come along with that. Also, we have weight gain and obesity, those migraine headaches, and also kidney and gallbladder problems. So the steps to follow in order to effectively do an elimination diet. So you want to stop eating all of the common allergen and food sensitivities that I talked about earlier, all those main ones on the list. And that's where you're going to figure it out. So that's like the first step, right? During this time, you want to carefully read food labels to make sure you're actually really avoiding these things, even like trace amounts of these foods. And you may want to keep a food journal during those 3 weeks to record how you're feeling, not so much of like exactly like amounts of food you're eating, but like, hey, this is what I had for lunch. This is how I felt after. This is going to come in handy when you begin reintroducing the foods later on. After 3 weeks, you want to reintroduce one food group at a time. Eat the suspicious food daily if you can for about 1 to 2 weeks and record your symptoms. Notice any changes in symptoms between the elimination phase and the reintroduction phase. If symptoms return after beginning to eat one of the suspicious foods, you can confirm that this food is a trigger by eliminating it once again. The goal is to see if the symptoms clear up once again when the food is removed. You can see the process is a bit of a trial and error, right? Like it's very cumbersome it's a lot of work, honestly, to do an elimination diet, and it's not exactly fun. It's very time consuming. It can be a lengthy, process. So what's a better way? What's a better way? That's what I want to talk about. Identifying food sensitivity. So nutritional intolerances can provoke a biophysical reaction which consequently shows the metabolic system. Continuing to eat foods to which one is intolerant can lead to weight gain, headaches, bloating, edema, circulation problems, all kinds of things. So This is called a FEMA-1. This is from Daphne Labs in Italy. This test has been being used for over 20 years. It's really, really awesome. It basically, you takes a hair sample and it's analyzed against over 1,100 foods to assess the personalized tolerance level for each food item. This testing process evaluates nutritional differences that exist within the varieties of the same food. So that's why I like this. So if you look here, like you have multiple types of olives, you have multiple types of oranges. So it's not just testing against like one thing, because there could be different things in the foods that we're reacting to, you know, like a certain type of apple or, you know, a certain type of onion, different things like that. So I think that's really unique with this, which is why I like it. It definitely, it's to present the person with a greater possibility of having a significant number of tolerant foods to choose from, facilitating the creation of a personalized substitution diet rather than a broader, more traditional elimination diet, which I think is much better. So they basically use this unique technology, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen in a second. I'm going to share a different screen so I can show you like the master foods list, which is really cool. So it's a multi-frequency biospectrophotometry wavelength is extracted from the hair sample and compared with the wavelength of the food or element being analyzed. So this overlap generates a third wavelength as a reaction of the encounter between the two, which is then translated and parameterized by the bionic system into a percentage value using mathematical models based on genetic algorithms, including age, height, weight, and pathologies. So this patented methodology was validated by a pilot study conducted by ASL, AIAS, so it's Italian government health authorities. Through 2,500 blind test repetitions, it was concluded that this methodology has a 94% repeat accuracy rate. So really accurate. When you look at like the hair test from Everlywell, they're not doing this type of testing. It's a hair test, and it's not this. They're very inaccurate. I did one and it was not accurate at all. So it's a super simple process. You order the test kit, you get shipped the test kit with instructions. You take some hair from the head or the body and place it in the envelope, ship it back, and within a few weeks, you get your test results. So I'm going to share a different screen real quick so I can kind of show you how this works or what else on here. Okay, so this is, you know, there's 26 items in berries, 99 fruit items, 11 dried fruits, 14 for onions and garlic, 20 mushrooms, 30 for tubers and root vegetables. So, you know, it's really looking at so many things. It's looking exotic meats, processed meats, poultry, pork, sweeteners, herbs and spices, fresh and dried. It really gives you like a really cool look at so many things. So this is like, yeah, I really, really like this test. So all these different kinds of flour, right? So it's looking at all-purpose baker's flour, all-purpose unbleached flour, almond, blanch flour, arrowroot flour, barley flour. Like, what are you reacting to? And then that way you can just eliminate those things. And then, so there's like a color coding system too. You know, there's like yellow and red. So the yellow stuff is, you're kind of reactive. So you can cut those out for a little while. The red stuff is like, you're really reacting to it. So you definitely want to eliminate those things. But this is like a much quicker, easier way to figure out what is bothering you. So I'm going to stop that and I'm going to go back to the other screen. So this company is pretty cool too, because they have some other tests that are really awesome. So they have like a toxic element test too. You can look at all these toxic elements. It looks at your mineral levels. in the body. And then it also looks at these toxic elements as well, like lead and mercury, lithium, see what you're high in. There's a digestive system one. Typically I use the GI map test because that's a diagnostic test. But this one's really cool. It tells me a lot of the same information, but it's not considered diagnostic because they're not going in and they're not getting like, they're not pulling out like the DNA of these parasites or anything like that. So while it can tell me that, yes, you you likely might have some parasites, it's not like, yes, you have them because we, excluded the DNA and we found the DNA like the GI map does. So it's a little bit different, but still tells a lot of information, which is really cool. And then there's also like a liver function test, which is awesome because like typically, so this shows like this person's, what works best for their bodies, in terms of like liver health for remedies. So greater burdock, juniper, look, dandelion's not really very high. What else? Like milk thistle. So that's typically something that most people recommend. Oh, take milk thistle for your liver and dandelion. Well, for this person, those two remedies aren't the most effective. You're going to want greater burdock and juniper root to support your liver. Even this, black horehound, this aloe vera is much better for this person. So that's why I really like these tests. So these are really cool. If you're interested in getting testing, pricing. So if you wanted to get all of those bundles, that includes the nutritional intolerance, the mineral gram and toxic elements, and the intestinal dysbiosis, that's $550. Just for the nutritional tolerances alone, that's $350. And then here's the pricing. And then as long as you buy like one of the main panels, that liver panel is $25. You can't buy the liver panel by itself. So if you wanted to do something like an interpretation after that, I can always order these tests for you. And basically it's just shipped, to you. They send me the results. And then if you wanted, and then I can just send you the results if that's all you wanted, or if you wanted like a consultation, a customized plan and something, we can discuss that. But you can always schedule a complimentary call with me to see what test options are a good fit for you. Because my thing is like test, don't guess. So many people are out there trying all these different supplements, trying all these different crazy restrictive diets. They're still not seeing any results. I talk to these people every day. Let's test, like stop guessing, test, let's figure out what's going on. Let's figure out the root cause. And then you can heal, right? Instead of just throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping that something sticks. So I'm going to go back to exit out of this. Let me see, do we got any questions? Okay, let me see questions. Yeah. So Jolene, I hope that answered your question about how the healthy foods can cause these sensitivities, and notice the signs. So those signs are those GI symptoms, those, all of those symptoms that I mentioned with that, and that leaky gut, that intestinal hyperpermeability, that is why those healthy foods can sometimes cause us issues. So the only thing you notice is runny nose with red pepper flakes and chipotle seasonings. That could be, I mean, that's kind of like some spicy stuff. So that just might be like some clearing out your sinuses. It would be hard to say without, getting that test, but that could be just because of the spice and the heat. It's kind of clearing out your sinuses and causing a little bit of drainage there. Do allergy tests only show reactions if you ate a specific food, or still tests for everything? So they still test for everything. They're going to test your blood against these foods when it comes to the allergy tests. Same with the hair test. It's testing that frequency with that food and your hair. So you don't have to be like eating these things to have that happen. The one thing that you do, if you are getting tested for celiac, they do require, typically when you go the conventional testing route, they do make you eat gluten, I think for like 3 to 6 weeks before testing, because they want to look for that intestinal damage. That's just not something I'm willing to do. my mom still swears, she's like, I think you have celiac. And I'm like, it doesn't really matter because the only treatment is a gluten-free diet. And I already follow that anyway. So I'm not going to go eat gluten again just to get myself tested. I guess the only benefit would be that tax write-off with the food, because you can write off your food because gluten-free items are so much more expensive. But I don't really eat a lot of those gluten-free items anyways. I try to stick to whole foods as much as possible. So that test is not really worth it to me. But yeah, so you don't have to be eating these foods for it to come back, because they're going to test against that with your blood. Hey, Laura. All right. So you guys have any other questions? Let me know. You guys want to schedule a complimentary call to see just more, send me a message. I can send you some more information on these tests too. I just think they're really beneficial. Oh, you're welcome, Jolene. Like, figure out what is triggering you. So many people are walking around with brain fog and digestive issues and no energy. And a lot of this stuff, it all stems from poor gut health, right? But if we can figure out what those food triggers are and we remove those, then we can begin the healing process of healing the gut. And then we can reintroduce those foods again. So like when I went through mine a few years ago, I was reacting to pretty much everything I ate. And when I got my list back, I was like, what am I going to eat? I was like a mess. And I'm like, even with my degree in nutrition, it was super difficult, to follow a strict diet for a while. But once I got through like the 3 months of a really strict elimination protocol, and I was doing like my gut healing protocol as well with specific targeted supplements, for me that I needed because of my issues, because I got the GI map test. So, figure out what's wrong, then you can start healing, and then you're going to have more energy. You're going to be able to lose weight. You're going to have better focus. You're just going to feel better overall. So, like I said, test, don't guess. Feel free to message me. I can send you more info on these tests. And we can hop on a call and see if this is something that would benefit you and help you begin to feel better, because we really all deserve to feel good. Food should give us energy. It should make us feel great. It is fuel for our bodies. It should not be dragging us down. It should not make us feel bloated, gassy, and just not feel good. So test, don't guess. It's a super affordable price, definitely worth it, so that you know what is bothering you. Hope you guys all have a great rest of your week, and let me know if you have any questions. Talk to you guys later. Bye.